I believe it's my turn. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. We're happy to have you to our global market outlook for solar power 2025-2029 online launch. My name is Michael Schmeler. I'm the Executive Advisor and Director of Market Intelligence at Solar Power Europe. And with my team at Solar Power Europe, I'm responsible for this and other reports, although this is the biggest and probably also most challenging one, simply because we try to cover the entire world. So we have 90 minutes ahead of us, and what I want to do first is I want to say thank you to the sponsors who made that project possible. And also our partners, in particular the Global Solar Council, the global association of our sector, and Intersolar Europe, where we launched the report 2 weeks ago physically. Although not on that slide, I think the most important supporters of this report are in fact the national and regional associations. Without them, it would have not been possible to gather all that data, all that information that has flown into these 160 pages, which is thicker than ever before. Okay, so what do we have ahead of us? So I will start with a short summary, 15-20 minutes summary of the report. Every report that we publish every year has a feature. This year, the feature market is India. So we're happy to have with us Subramaniam Pulipaka, the CEO of the National Solar Energy Federation of India, NSEFI. We will then have a summary of the global policy recommendations of Anjali Tatigara, who's head of Market Intel, so basically my equivalent at the Global Solar Council. And we're also happy to have with us someone from the industry. We have with us Miguel Herrero from PV Case. He's also head of Market Intel at PV Case, and he will simply show how the industry, or PV Case as a representative of the industry, is looking at market growth. We will finally have a panel discussion with all participants where we reflect on the presentations, but also on your questions. So if you have any questions, please feel free to write them in the Q&A session, and if possible, we will address that in our discussion. Okay, so let me just give you a quick overview on how we see the market. So maybe just as an intro, in the forward of our global market outlook, we start with the year 2024. 2024 was a true landmark year for solar power. We've probably written in most of the forwards in the last few years that growth was bigger than expected, and it was another great year. But we still believe that last year was a special year, and I will explain also why in the next few slides. Okay. So where are we now? So as you can see here, the global solar installations set another record. Close to 600 gigawatt were installed. That's almost 150 gigawatts, or exactly 148 gigawatts more, or 33% more than the year before, when 449 gigawatt was installed. That's not as much as between 2022 and 2023, but still a remarkable year. And And it actually was more than we anticipated. We were thinking that the market would somewhat digesting the strong growth of last year, and our forecast last year was that the market would be around 544, right, gigawatts for 2024. But our high scenario, which was 650 gigawatt, still captured that growth. What you can see, and I go later on into details, is obviously that much of the growth that we've seen was due to China's strong growth. But about that later. So first, maybe about this general graphs, how solar is driving the renewable penetration in global electricity generation. We not only have to talk about capacity, we have to talk really about output, and that's what it is in the about what in the end about, that's what the consumer cares for. And here you clearly can see, although solar is still very small with 6.9% market share among all power generation sources. What's remarkable is that how much solar has actually grown year on year. It was 1.3 percentage points, which is quite a bit actually, compared to the others who grew much less, or even non-renewables who declined. But it also shows actually that since the beginning of the decade, so since 2020, solar has more than doubled actually its share, from 3.2%, 2%. And if you compare that to the other renewables, actually they grew in the same time, same 4 years, only by 0.2%. So if you extrapolate that, I think the growth will continue to be very strong, even if we anticipate more electrification. And this slide, this is a new slide, as a new graph we have in the report, is, I feel, very important. Here you can see the solar electricity generation grows. So simply the solar electricity that was generated by the newly added capacities. And solar produced 474 terawatt hours. That is more than 2 times as large as from our friends from wind. And it shows also that one argument which is sometimes brought against solar, that our capacity factor is rather low compared to other technologies, doesn't matter actually so much. Solar is growing so quickly, and solar is so much cheaper than the others when you talk about installing capacities actually, that the capacity factor then is leveled by these advantages. Next slide. Okay, so let's look at the top 10 markets, and here you can see how strong China dominates the world of solar. And it installed 330 gigawatts, up from 253 gigawatts. And that's 6 times the capacity that it added compared to the second-ranked country, the US, which also grew strongly. I don't want to go into into details for all the countries, but you could see that basically that almost all of the countries grew quite a bit, or grew a bit over the last year. I think one highlight is clearly India, which more than doubled capacities, and it's also noteworthy to see simply that Brazil, although it was and Germany both, although they were taken over now by India, still are the other 2 markets actually that are in the 2-digit range. Okay, so this slide here shows the percentages of the additions added last year for the top 10 markets. And here you can see also again how much China dominated the world. So more than 2/3 of the installations from the top 10 were added by China, followed by the US and India. And if you look at the yellow-orange marked fields, you can see that the 3 Asian countries, if you add that up, actually had even a share of 3/4 of the world. Okay. I think this is a remarkable slide. The Global Solar Council has already used it quite a bit last year when it actually happened. But I think one cannot probably use that and mention that frequently enough, because it is so impressive. Since if we look at the commercialization of the first silicon cell that was produced in the Bell Labs 68 years ago in the US. So it took really this 68 years until the terawatt was reached, and then it took another 2 years until the second terawatt was reached, and we're quickly on our way to the third. So I think this is really testament of the impressive growth of solar. If we look at the shares, the regional shares of the different markets, we can still see that China grew its cumulative share. And I think this is also really interesting, because a while ago we thought the solar market is now so big, so mature, that a single country could not change the course of installations anymore. But China again surprised us. So they really grew in the last 2 years by 6 percentage points from 2022 to 2023, and now again by another 4 percentage points. So having now actually 44% of the market, and we're talking here not about annual, but we're talking really about the entire generation fleet. So that means nearly half of the solar power output that we're seeing on our planet is coming from China, which is really impressive. I think the other markets, more or less kept their shares. They of course lost a little bit because of the strong growth of China, but it didn't change so much in the cumulative level. Okay. While China and Asia dominated total generation capacities, if we look at another metric, and that's installed capacity per capita, that's different. Here the clear outlier is an outstanding country is Australia. 4 years now. They are the number 1 here, and now reaching even 1.5 kilowatt per capita, which is impressive. So that you just can imagine that basically 3 typical rooftop modules are on each house, not only each house, each apartment, or each personal, as that each person has basically 3 panels installed. That's quite impressive. And you can also see that the Netherlands and Germany are the other 2 countries that are exceeding the 1 kilowatt per watt capita. What's also interesting to mention is that China has now, it's not shown here, but is at this that's total installed capacity list, ranks at the 16th place with around with around 700 watt of installed capacity. And you can also see here that all the other countries, or hardly any of the other countries in the top 10, is in the top 10 of total installed capacities or annual installed capacity, except for Spain. If we stay in this metric and look at the different regions over time, you can clearly see that when you look at average installed capacities per capita, that ranged at around 276 watt end of last year. And most of the regions actually, except Middle East and Africa, were above the average. But the one who strongly is exceeding that is really Europe, with nearly 500 watt per capita, showing simply how mature these markets are compared to the other markets around the world. So again, China stands also somewhat out still in Asia with a 700 watt, but it's still far from the leaders. And just as an FYI, the US, for example, which was the second largest market last year, also has only 650 watt per capita installed. And India, the rising star and really third largest market of the world, has so far 90 watt per capita installed. Obviously, the electricity consumption in India is different per capita than in European markets. Nevertheless, let's continue now to the future and what we forecast. So we do see annual growth for the coming years, but the growth is somewhat more moderate. For this year, we see 10%. There's upward potential, downward potential. We have to simply see what happens. A lot will depend on China, where market design is changing as of June, and where we've seen a record amount of installations in the first quarter. But in the last few weeks, installations already somewhat going down. So it's hard to predict. So that's why we have really somewhat of a still, although it's rather short term, a wide range in our estimates. If we look further ahead, so we see market growth between 1 and 14%. So when we look back in to our global market outlook from 2024, we projected actually then for the coming 5 years that around 2.34 terawatt would be installed. This year we are similarly optimistic, so our numbers are a bit lower. So we anticipate 2.27 terawatt to be added during the forecast period, simply because the geopolitical outlook with all the trade tensions, trade wars that we're seeing. So there's a lot of uncertainty, and that's why we didn't increase our forecast, which we usually did over the past years. So why do we see actually only 1% market growth in 2026? That's due to China. So we still believe that the Chinese market will grow this year because the first half was very, very strong. And that will basically result in further growth this year. But next year, we will see China to really digest the new market design, which is turning turning a somewhat still a feed-in tariff into a very liberal market, because this has to really trickle down to regional, local levels, and that will really have some consequences on growth. We see similarities to 2017, I believe, when also China, after 2017, 2018, when China, after a very strong growth, changed the solar incentive scheme, and the market decreased quite a bit. Nevertheless, China usually adapts quickly and is fast in implementing regulations, so we anticipate them to further grow afterwards, and then based on that also see the global markets increase again to the two-digit level. So while we see around 655 gigawatts to be installed in this year, so we see around 700, so around again 660 gigawatts in 2026. 2027 will be around 750 gigawatts. 2028 850, and 2029 930 gigawatts. So if everything goes well, we believe that the market could even reach the terawatt level by 2029. In any case, we think it will happen in 2030. But if things can go really wrong, we also believe that the market could stay almost at a level below 700 gigawatt. So that's not much more than we anticipate then for 2026, 2027. Okay, so how do we see the regional development in the next 5 years? We're seeing the Chinese market share going somewhat down, but still adding more than 50% of the global market growth, or being responsible for more than 50% of the global market growth in 2029. Europe will more or less keep its share. The US, under its current government, which is not very supportive of renewables, you've been probably all following the discussions about the Inflation Reduction Act, and yeah, how if it can be abolished actually very quickly. I think there are at the moment in the US severe discussions, and we're waiting actually for final updates in the next few days. And at the same time, we see the APEC market without China continuing to grow. And finally, we see also triggered by the low module and component prices, also stronger growth in the Middle East and African segment. Okay. Nevertheless, although China will dominate, and we see also strong growth or we see also in Europe and Asia strong growth to continue. The important thing is that we see really more markets becoming gigawatt scale markets. So far, it has been very disappointing to see that markets like Indonesia or Thailand or Malaysia really not becoming actually gigawatt scale markets. The Philippines just made it last year, I think installing around 1.2 gigawatt. But we anticipate that this year is really the year where many more markets actually make that step and turn into this important, or what we consider an important threshold to become a notable market and a gigawatt scale market. Okay, let's look at utility versus the rooftop segment. We do expect both segments to continue simply growing with the growth of the market. But although I haven't shown here the relative numbers, you can simply see that the growth of the utility scale market for the coming years is growing stronger. So the rooftop market segment share decreased to 42% in 2024. We believe that it will even go further down to 40% in 2025, and then more or less hover at that level until it recovers a little bit from what it experienced from this hype that it experienced during the energy crisis, and go a little bit up to around 43% by 2029, simply because the value proposition for the individual household is still very attractive with solar. Okay, let's quickly go look into 2030. We don't forecast 2030, but what we've done is we've simply extrapolated the growth from 2024 to 2029 to 2030, because 2030 is simply a very important year in terms of also climate targets. And here you can see that also then in the medium scenario, we see the market reach the terawatt level. And if actually, and I think this is a key takeaway from this chart. What we want to also show here is, if we look at total installed capacities, you see that the solar power generation fleet is increasing strongly over the next few years, and we will reach, or we will basically triple installations from the 2.2 terawatt we had end of last year towards the end of 2029. So that's 6.1 terawatt, which we anticipate, and in the high scenario, even 7.2 terawatt. Nevertheless, if we look at the COP28 target of tripling renewables of 11 terawatt by 2030, up from 4.8 terawatt, which we had in 2024. So you can simply see that solar is increasing actually dramatically, from having a share of close to 50%, close to half, from 2.2 terawatt to 7.1 terawatt, being two-thirds of the whole pie. So it's fair to say that really the growth of the renewables will simply be on the shoulders of solar. I think other renewables might see it different, but we simply believe that if we look back and simply at our value proposition here at solar, being so flexible, so versatile, being able to install from very small to very big power plants, and also being incorporated in the buildings, solar becoming more and more building construction material, that solar will have this strong share. Actually, the Global Solar Council even believes that solar should contribute 8 terawatt, and we will discuss later about that, how that might be reached. So just in conclusion, so we consider that 2024 was a landmark year for solar, simply not because it's setting another new installation record, but also a bit because it provided 4/5 of all new renewable capacity added. Solar's electricity share also reaching 7% and thus growing faster than any other technology. Important milestones: solar fleet doubled from 1 to 2 terawatt in just 2 years. China remains in a league of its own, installing 330 gigawatts, more than all other top 10 markets combined, and still having a 55% global share, showing simply significant market imbalance that we have to work on. The global solar growth is expected to slow from over 30% to 10% in 2025. And that is, we will discuss that later on, amid rising curtailment and grid challenges in more advanced markets in particular, but in particular because of the Chinese market design changes taking place this year. So after a stagnant 2026, we see growth will rebound because China will simply adapt to the new design, and we will go up towards 14% and potentially surpassing then the 1 terawatt annual level by 2030. In our mid scenario, we forecast 7.1, 7.2 terawatt by 2030, which would translate into solar contributing around 2/3 of the renewables share and growth by 2030. That's my summary, and I would like to hand over to Subramaniam Pulipaka, the CEO of NSEFI, who will share his insights about the world's third largest market and one of the fastest growing markets last year, and that is India. Subu, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Michael, and Solar Power Europe team for having me. We would, as Michael mentioned, India has now become the third largest market in solar, surpassing our friends from Germany last year. In my presentation, I will take you through the key features that have contributed to India's solar growth, and also give you an orientation of the outlook that we are looking at for the next year as well as in the coming years. So, as of April, India's renewable energy capacity is now fully dominated by solar installations. Our total installed renewable capacity is closer to 180 gigawatt, out of which more than 100 gigawatt is now coming from solar energy. India is now the third largest installed capacity nation in solar. I also want to sort of give a disclaimer that in India, we measure our installed capacity in AC, not DC. So whatever you're seeing, the figures are AC capacity figures. So we are now at 107 gigawatt AC. Equivalent DC capacity would be closer to somewhere around 130 to 140 gigawatt. As you can see, India's solar journey started in early 2014. In the initial years, the emphasis was on catching up to the growth curve. Targets have been revised for 2022 to achieve 175 gigawatt of total renewable energy capacity with 100 gigawatt of solar. But all of us are aware that the 2 years between 2020 and 2022, there have been significant disruptions caused by COVID. While we've had closer to 100 gigawatt worth of projects in pipeline, because of both COVID-induced and other concerns, we had to sort of have those projects the realization of projects happened a couple of years later. And finally, as of January 2025, India's capacity milestone crossed the 100 gigawatt mark. In terms of the bifurcation of the total solar basket in India, the utility scale ground mount capacities today significantly control the total installed capacity. Almost 83 gigawatt, as you can see, is contributed by the large scale utility ground mounted plants. These plants are also in one way contributing in the merchant market through open access. Another 18 gigawatt, closer to 18 gigawatt capacity is coming from rooftop. This rooftop has both components, the residential rooftop component as well as the commercial industrial rooftop component. Indian government in 2023 has initiated a new scheme of biddings, followed by an amendment of bidding guidelines, which is known as Firm Dispatchable Renewable Energy (FDRE). So since 2022-2023 financial year, we also have hybrid solar projects, solar wind plus storage projects coming up. The current installed quantum is around 2.89 gigawatt, and this is going to be a huge lever of growth when we look at the outlook for the next 5 years. Uh, Not very often India's off-grid solar capacities and its achievements are mentioned, but India is home to one of the largest off-grid solar home lighting systems as well as solar street light program, along with the off-grid solar pumps. As you can see, closer to 5 gigawatt of our capacity, of our existing capacity is still already coming from off-grid, and it is set to grow, keeping in view the government's ambitious targets for off-grid solar pumps. Uh, I thought it will be good to show you a snapshot of what all happened last year in one go. We crossed the 100 gigawatt milestone. While we are focusing on deployment, India has also turned over a new leaf in manufacturing. We have now touched 75 gigawatt. As I speak, we have touched 75 gigawatt milestone in our total module manufacturing capacity, and more than 47% of installed solar capacity is now contributing to the total basket of renewables. I should also say today that as of February 2025, solar is the second largest installed capacity generation source in India in terms of the gigawatts. In terms of gigawatt hour, we are near second to our other energy generation source, which is hydro. But by the end of 2026, solar generation is predicted to be the second largest energy generation source in India after thermal. In terms of AC, we did 25 gigawatt of installed capacity last year. Converting that to DC would be closer to 31.8, 32 gigawatt of DC capacity has been installed. We also launched a new solar rooftop residential program. Honorable Prime Minister launched it on 21st of January 2024. The target is to add 10 million rooftop installations in 36 months. The target is until 2027 December, and we've already did 1 million pumps in the last 12 months in 2024. In this slide, you can see India's solar growth is driven by 7 key levers, with manufacturing, of course, at the center. I will quickly take you through each of these levers and give you a point of view on how each of these elements have contributed to India's accelerated growth, and what we believe is going to be a prolonged journey of intense installation activity in the next 48 months. The green energy open access rules is something that the government has introduced in 2022 July. Any commercial and industrial entity in the country today can use the interstate transmission system network and procure renewable energy and wheel them through the network with zero wheeling charges and grid charges. This was initiated 3 years back, and our commercial industrial market is now growing at a year-on-year growth rate of 150%, and this has become a key lever in activating the merchant market and the commercial industrial market in the last 2 years. The minimum capacity of procurement has been reduced from 1 megawatt to 100 kilowatt. So any establishment which is a private entity that wishes to procure renewable energy can now procure quantum starting from 100 kilowatt through the ISTS network. For those of you who are not aware, India is home to the world's largest high voltage synchronized grid. We have, as a country, we serve 1.4 billion population, and we are connected to the single grid, while the grid is divided into four parts: western, southern, five parts: western, southern, northern, and southern and central. But it is fully synchronized, and ISTS is the backbone. The interstate transit system is the backbone of our country's power evacuation infrastructure, and has also been a huge catalyst in us achieving our 100 gigawatt milestone. This is another aspect of the lever that we're talking about, where the government has mandated renewable purchase obligation (RPO). As you can see in the table, by 2030, every distribution company in the country would be mandated to procure closer to 45% of their electricity and energy from renewables. They have given dedicated capacity buckets for each renewable source. So if you can't see solar, that is because solar is categorized in other renewable energy, which always takes the major chunk of the renewable purchase obligation. Currently, this year, 28.24% is dedicated to solar RPO. And another noteworthy policy reform the government has taken, which you can see in this slide, is dedicating a specific bucket for distributed renewable energy. Any capacity below 10 megawatt is constituted as a distributed energy generation source. Solar pumps, rooftop, and other off-grid and on-grid systems will be part of this. And this is going to be a key lever for activating India's rooftop and agri-solar applications, which will be contributing to, in some states, more than 20% of their total energy requirements. Like I was talking about DRE, government also has launched a scheme after consulting with the private sector on solar pumps. We have three components of it. One component is installing solar at a height in existing agriculture or abandoned lands. If you are doing on agriculture land, then you are mandated to increase the structure height. The second part is installing off-grid pumps. Around 1.75 million pumps will be installed in the next 1.5 years. The third component is grid-connected pumps. Closer to 4.5 million pumps are targeted there. While we are also installing individual grid-connected pumps, a separate feeder solarization scheme has also now been announced in 2024. Now, instead of individually solarizing the pumps, the feeder that is connected to pumps can be solarized with a ground-mounted utility scale capacity equivalent of solar system. This is set to add 28 to 30 gigawatt of installed capacity in the next around 26 months, starting from June 2025. The main lever is manufacturing. We believe India is now at the verge of becoming the largest manufacturing hub after China, or the only largest hub out of China in the world. As you have seen in my slides before, and in this slide, by this year end, we will touch 80 gigawatt of module manufacturing mark. But from 2026, here I have projected our demand, because a set of new regulations and policies will be coming into place from June 2026, which will mandate domestic cells and domestic modules made from domestic cells in key projects which are funded by government, or which have subsidies, or which are connected to the government grids. That makes domestic requirement of manufacturing of wafers and cells more important. PLI has been a success in both tranches. Although we did face some headwinds here and there. So this is the projection for demand, and we believe by 2030 India's module demand will touch 160 gigawatt DC with 120 gigawatt of cells, again DC, and we would require 100 gigawatt each of polysilicon wafer and ingot. This is my final slide on outlook. This year, 2025, we believe on a conservative estimate, we will cross again 25 gigawatt. But on a higher side, we believe this year might be again an all-time high year for us, and we might cross closer to 32 gigawatt in AC, uh, making that closer to 45 gigawatt in DC. Next year, 2026 onwards, the trend suggests that India will enter into, or India will graduate into, an accelerated growth phase. We'll be increasing our year-on-year market uh, capacity significantly, as you can see from our low and high trajectories that we have predicted. Two main reasons. The ISTS waiver, interstate transmission waiver, will expire from June 2025 this year. So there will be incentives for developers to install quicker to avoid the impact of the ISTS charges, because from 2026 every year 25% of charges will be increased. In 26 it is 25%, from 26 to 27 is 50, and then 75 and 100. So 2026 to 2028 is a period where you can see India adding somewhere between 60 to 80 gigawatt of capacity in AC, which will convert to almost 84 to 120 gigawatt of DC in those 2 years. That is why we are looking at an accelerated growth phase. And from 28 to 30, we see that distributed renewable energy, including rooftop pumps, along with the solar capacities that are coming up for meeting our green hydrogen targets, dictating the trend. India's target for 2030 in solar is to 280 gigawatt. You can see our low estimate trajectory predicts that we will achieve it. But there is also a chance we might overachieve our target and end up at 320 gigawatt. With this, I hand it back to Michael. And thank you very much for giving us this opportunity.
Thanks, Subbu. Great to see such large growth. Very excited to see that. Let's now move on to Anjali Latigara, who's the head of market intelligence at the Global Solar Council, who was also a partner in publishing the Global Market Outlook. And they've been responsible for the policy recommendations, and Anjali will share them with us now. Anjali.
Thanks very much, Michael, for the introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everybody who has joined us today, and from wherever you are. It's a pleasure to be here with all of you, and really congratulate Solar Power Europe for another flagship report publication this year on global market outlook for solar PV, and our long journey to work on it together as partners, and we're really happy to support and continue this journey with you guys. So I will be representing the policy recommendation part from this year's global market outlook, and we'll go through introduction slides for Global Solar Council and then policy recommendations. For those of you who don't know about the Global Solar Council, we are the leading international trade association for really uniting and representing the global solar industry at the global energy diplomacy platforms. And our vision and mission is really clear. We want to unite the voice of solar PV industry worldwide to really and truly lead the global energy transition through solar installations. And for that, we need to create a very fair and sustainable world with solar at the heart of a new energy economy. And so far, what we have been hearing from Michael, my friend from NCEFI, that we have installed over 2.2 terawatt of solar capacity in total at the end of 2024. But what we need to achieve is, and what we are advocating for as global solar industry and the Global Solar Council is to reach the 8 terawatts of global solar total installations by 2030. And we need to really accelerate this annual installation rate for achieving this target. So our goal, vision, mission is really clear, and we welcome everybody to join us who really resonate with us on this platform. Now, quickly on Global Solar Council, as I said, we are the trade association and we do really market data-driven policy advocacy at the global, regional, and national level through our members. And one of the important pillars is the association members all around the world. So the Global Solar Council is represented in almost 90 to 92% of the national markets through our associations, association members. So you could see on the slide, the members' logos are here, and we really truly appreciate their support and leading the energy transition through solar in their markets. Again, GSC, another pillar for our representation worldwide is our corporate members. These are the members that are being with us in this journey. And I really want to mention this is the 10th year anniversary for Global Solar Council, and we truly applaud and appreciate everybody's support in reaching this milestone of 2.2 terawatt. And we're really looking ahead for next decade, and we really urge for your continued support and be with us on this journey to really see the 8 terawatt of installation by 2030 and more than that by 2035 in next decade to come. This is our small but really truly global team, and we are around 8 to 10 people here leading this energy transition through global solar policy advocacy work. Now, coming to the policy recommendation part that we have contributed for this year's Market Outlook report with Solar Power Europe as partner, I would, as Michael mentioned, in the high, low, and medium growth scenarios, we are far behind what we need to be achieving, which is 8 terawatt, and we are seeing that almost 7.1 terawatt can be achieved in medium or high growth scenario. So what needs to be done? We need the clear policy and the right ecosystem in these markets. So GSC really advocates for this 8 key pillars, and we encourage every policymakers to work on it, really starting first with grid. Solar has a major transforming role in a kind of playing a grid flexibility part, and lack of grid capacity and its kind of flexibility is holding the needed installation pace for solar. For those of you who know, at COP29, we said that we need efforts to deliver 2 times of grid infrastructure globally and unlock the flexibility. We have been seeing several, grid challenges, which is about curtailment, delays in the grid connections, but how we can mitigate this kind of challenges. So clearly we need step-by-step solutions for it. And we also encourage governments to join the Green Grids initiative to ensure that grid build out address the needs of growing PV deployment. Here, I would also like to highlight that all the grid operators should use and compensate the role of the solar PV inverters in kind of its leveraging its grid forming abilities to provide the firm frequency and voltage services. Of course, we need the coordinated grid upgradations. Why? To really reduce the grid connection delays and also avoid the solar curtailments. We have been seeing several examples all around the world. The recent being the blackouts in Spain and Iberian case, etc. So here, what we really see that the solar is needed, but we need a clear pathway for it, and tailored approach to it. So this is again an important pillar to really gain the investors' confidence into the markets. Next being the finance topic. We have been seeing that, there is an estimate of 12 trillion USD, which will be needed to really deliver the global target of tripling renewable energy, which is 11 terawatt by 2030. And currently, solar industry is seeing $500 billion of investment per year. So at this moment, we clearly see that industry requires increased volume of public and private blended finance at the lower cost of solar projects, specifically in the least developing countries and the emerging markets for solar. But the pace which is required is not happening, or the investments are not flowing at that rate. And hence, we need the strengthened support from the multilateral development banks, bilateral development banks, the domestic financial institutions, to really equip themselves through de-risking and innovative financing instruments, which can serve these underserved regions or the markets. And we think that the engagement of the major private investors will be a key for also distributed solar installations scale up, and setting the standardization ESG aspect in it. Further, we think that the grid finance should be counted as climate finance for the large scale solar and renewable energy deployment. Now, as the Global Solar Council, we have been playing an important role here to really lower the cost of finance, and we are aiming, to lower the rate from 15% to 5% globally. And for that, we are running a finance work stream, and under this work stream, we have two groups, task forces. One of that is International Solar Finance Group, which really brings together the representatives from public and private financial institutions, together with the captains of the PV industry, to address the barriers that are maintaining the high cost of capital and mobilize this huge amount needed for PV installations. We will be coming up with the policy position paper as part of this finance task force in June during London Climate Action Week. So for those of you who are interested in looking at the various solutions, the policy requirements around it, please keep an eye on that and be with us. Now, next, what we are recommending here is to really promote the solar plus energy storage installations and the inter-regional power supply. Now, everybody knows about, the proven benefits of solar plus storage and how it plays a role in making the grid resilient, stable, and flexible. When we are seeing the high share of renewable energy being put in the grid. And we are thinking that the system operators really could assess the benefits of this distributed solar PV and storage in detail, which can really reduce the need for high voltage transmission lines by bringing the generation closer to the consumption and behind the meter. Therefore, we think that policymakers and government must really support and have a targeted approach for making flexibility solutions available in the market. You can link it with solar, such as battery energy storage, pumped hydro storage, time of using pricing and flexible demand response methods. We have really best practices available in the in this scenario, and we should all take the learnings from there. Now, coming to interregional power supply and how that can really help in achieving this is, we need the global storage target here, and we see it's critical now. And we also think that enhancing the interregional penetration will also give us a clear roadmap for investment and road development for ensuring the energy transition on time. For example, targets like the one that was created and announced by the G7 and many governments at COP29, which is 1,500 gigawatt of global energy storage installation by 2030, a six-fold increase from 2024 levels. So this kind of target should be set, and there are already leading examples from countries around the world who are also leading the interregional connection initiative to support the least developing countries and the emerging markets for meeting their power demands through renewable energy and solar. Now coming to the next topic, which is really most talked about in last couple of years or since the COVID shock came, which is about supply chain. And for the solar, we need to strengthen and this global solar supply chain scenario, and we should have a very sustainable and stability aspect there. Like other renewable energy, supply chain, we need a clear initiative from the nations, regional players, and the global stakeholders that really align to reach the fair, open, and transparent, resilient global solar supply chain for the long-term success of the global solar industry. As we have a huge target, which is 8 terawatt of solar installation by 2030, and this is one of the pillars to achieve it. We think that policy makers or the decision makers and governments around the world who are really owning this space must adopt the supportive trade policies and should not be holding back the deployment, should not be compromising on quality of solar equipment, should really foster the competitiveness without pushing higher cost onto the end users, and really supporting the growing global demand of solar supply chain. That's why we need a coordination and collaboration and cooperation between the regions around the world. Now, to strengthen this aspect for solar industry, GSC is working closely with World Trade Organization, IRENA, and other stakeholders to create a platform for the dialogue on trade issues, the prices, and form the consensus around long-term strategy for ensuring the sustainability of it. We also run a high-level closed-door dialogue platform called Solar Quartet, which really deals about this issue and also an opportunity to work together for all the markets holistically. Now coming to another policy recommendations is about project development and how the permitting and the clearances processes play the part in timely commissioning of the projects. Here we have been saying for a long time, like our other friends from the renewable energy players and associations, is that we need a really transparent and fast permitting process. Now, how can we do it and what are the benefits? We already know that if the project comes on time, gets commissioned, on time, then there is a less perceived risk of, economic viability or getting the right investments on time for the next years. So there is a huge sensitivity around it, and that's why we need to streamline the permitting processes across the chain. And there have been many examples on it. Markets are leading and fast tracking this process through one-stop shop approaches, really doing the capacity building of their own concerned authorities, minimizing the number of approvals required for solar projects. And we should also kind of advocate for removing all the permitting aspect for the rooftop solar sector. Now, Global Solar Council is working on it for a long time, and we have also been associating with the Planning for Climate Commission to address these challenges further. Next is really we are talking about sustainability in the solar business through environmental, social, and governance standards. In few markets, the ESG standards are existing for solar PV, but most of the markets where we think that government must cover this aspect for solar PV to ensure the long-term sustainability. And we think that the regulators and solar industry must collaborate to promote the extended producer responsibility for solar equipment recyclability. We can develop dedicated processing facilities. We also need standards to do the decommissioning, to recycle the stuff, etc., and really kind of transfer this kind of materials from one place to another, where we call the dumping of this equipment. So GSC has been supporting the Solar Stewardship Initiative with our partner Solar Power Europe, which is a multi-stakeholder initiative that covers human rights, governance, and environmental aspect for solar industry. For those of you who are interested and really want to certify their facility as sustainable facility, should have a look at this initiative and be a part of it. So I encourage everybody to look at the Solar Stewardship Initiative that we have been running for considerable time. Now, lastly, I also want to touch upon the skill part for solar and how we can achieve just an equitable energy transition through creating more jobs for solar industry, and really achieving our wider goal on time. So far, there is an estimate that solar PV has employed around 7 million workforce, and we think that millions of more jobs will be needed across the value chain of solar to reach the 8 terawatts by 2030. And it comes with the immense responsibility that these jobs are safe, are part of just an equitable energy transition strategy. And that's why GSC has been encouraging the governments to endorse our work that we have been doing with our partner GWO, and we call it the Global Solar Training Standards Initiative, that sets the global solar standard certification for training. We have been asking for adoption in as many parts of the world as possible. We also think that the solar workforce targets can be created within the national policy or the national renewable energy policy work to really meet the wider goal of their nation. And I think here we also need to think about really upskilling, retraining, or reskilling pathways to promote the transfer of the workers from carbon-intensive industries to solar industry jobs. Lastly, again, I would like to talk on policies and setting the solar targets under nationally determined contributions goal. Now we think that almost all least developing countries or the emerging countries should have national solar installation targets obligated under their climate goal, and there has to be establishment of clear and stable policy and regulatory aspect to really attract the investments. The country should put in place a market tailored approach as well, and think beyond the utility scale as solar as well. So there have been innovations around off-grid solar application, the agri PV, the floating solar PV, the building integrated PV installation, etc. And we need to really strategize and tap this opportunity or the potential as well. And the Global Solar Council, that's why, is also running the sustainability work stream and really kind of exploring this kind of aspects here. And we have partnered this year with UNDESA, the UN Department of Economic and Social Affairs, to really showcase also about the potential of distributed solar potential in the least developing markets. The report work is currently ongoing and will be published during July in United States. So please watch out for this important piece as well. Now coming to other thing that one would think, how is GST actioning this recommendation? As I mentioned, we have been running 5 excellent key policy work streams, and through which we are advocating major pillars for global solar industry development. I would like to again highlight our skill task force, grids and storage task force, and finance task force. And as I said, under skill, we are running the Global Solar Training Standard initiative. We are also planning to come up with global solar workforce outlook and the policy impact around it to really hold the policymakers and really strategize this important piece of work to include the solar workforce requirement in the policy framework itself. For grids and storage, we are again currently working on a really important piece of position paper, which will be coming out in September during New York Climate Action Week. The task force is currently being chaired by SMA Inverter Company based in Germany. Finance task force, again, as I emphasized, we recommend everybody to have a look at our finance position paper when it's out in June during London Climate Action Week. There are multiple things going on, and if you wish to join this very important piece of work and lead and influence the global energy transition through solar, do join us and visit us on this website. Thanks very much for the opportunity, and handing over back to you, Michael.
Thanks, Anjali. So we will talk a little bit about that in our brief panel at the end. We're coming now to a representative of the industry, and we're very happy to have with us Miguel Herrero, who's also running market intelligence at PVCase, which has a really great overview on what's going on in the world, simply because they're a software company many companies use for building their and planning their plans. Miguel, floor is yours.
Hi, Michael. Thank you very much. I'm not sure, I cannot start my video yet, but I can go ahead. Good morning and afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Solar Power Europe, a lot for all the great work that you do, and particularly this report, which I'm super happy that we have supported this year. Thanks a lot to Michael, Subramanian, and Anjali for your fantastic presentations. Those were tough acts to follow. but I will try. And maybe I can turn on my video. No, not yet. Anyway, my name is Miguel Herrero, and I'm a senior market advisor here at PV Case. And what I want to share today is a little bit of our view of solar market trends that we see across the world, particularly in the past year, and a bit of the outlook going forward, and also share some insights about the trends that we see from our user data. So PV Case is the leading software company revolutionizing utility and commercial scale solar project development through automation of the entire value chain of the project development process. So our end-to-end suite provides automation software for site selection, PV design, and yield assessment, offering seamless alternatives to traditional manual methods to deliver much optimal results for utility scale and C&I solar project development, crucially in significantly less time and with less effort. Our what we do basically is we help our customers who use our software to identify, evaluate, engineer, and optimize solar assets across the world. And so our platform is used by over 1,500 customers across the world in over 75 countries. Hello there. Who use our platform to plan over 4 terawatts of solar projects every year. And when I say 4 terawatts, this is not a figure that I'm inventing. This is what we can actually see in our user data. So what you can see here is just a snapshot of the scale of all the projects being planned and designed in only one of our tools, PV Case Ground Mount. And I love this image because it really shows the industry's momentum. In 2024, our users started 4 terawatts of projects. They worked on 4 terawatts of projects. And around 15% of those, we believe, are in more advanced stages of development. So they could be built sometime soon. Because what you see here is not the projects that have been built or projections about how many projects may get built. These are the actual projects, the future projects that will be built, that will be installed, likely over the next 1 to 10 years, depending on a lot of factors, as you all know. And this partial view of the global pipeline, because we're only one of many solar engineering software out there, represents tens of thousands of actual projects that are currently being not only planned or engineered, but analyzed, permitted, requesting grid connection, and which, again, I really hope, and I think we're all here because of that, will be built soon. I think in conclusion, I think this really shows this trend, that this trend of rapid solar expansion is real. There are probably tens of terawatts being planned around the world. And this is why I personally really feel confident that we will continue to see the solar market growing in the coming years, even though I can only agree with the outlook shared by Solar Power Europe that this growth may slow down, at least for a bit, while we go through all of this market uncertainty. Now, the reason why we are so used is because we really help our customers deliver more projects faster and better. And I think this is going to be really, really key if we want to achieve the global market outlooks, at least medium scenario, but particularly if we want to inch towards the high scenario. To do that, among the many things that our industry needs to do is to increase the efficiency of project development. And so here what you can see is a comparison between traditional methods to engineer PV plants and how long it takes with PVK's ground mount. With our tools, our customers achieve massive time savings in engineering of solar projects of approximately 89% of time saved per detailed layout and up to 98% time saved in preliminary designs. In a scenario in which most markets around the world, if not all, are very labor constrained, this type of efficiency is what really makes solar industry advance. After just quick overview of how we see the market moving, the US market has seen a very strong growth in the past years, 54% increase last year actually, which has made it again into the second largest global market, driven by, among other things, by growing electricity demand and a favorable support framework, specifically the IRA. However, we see massive potential for a slowdown in coming years due to uncertainties, due to like the high costs of equipment and project development, the IRA phase down, and other permitting constraints and regulatory uncertainty. So while we might not see directly the effect of all of this uncertainty materialize this year, I think it's likely going to be felt over the next couple of years, and particularly if the IRA negotiations pan out as they are planned right now. In Europe, which is a obviously very diverse set of markets, we generally see a growth, even though this is going to be a very significant deceleration we're seeing significant deceleration from the past years. I think we see the potential for growth still, not only because we see a stable policy environment and ambitious targets, but because, unlike the USA, equipment is a lot cheaper and much more plentiful. However, it will come as no surprise that we see permitting delays and grid constraints, among other issues, or slow electrification as something that is slowing the market down. Notwithstanding, if we go back to our visibility into the project pipeline in these two regions, we can say quite confidently that there's still a lot of very strong potential, with tens of thousands of projects being planned right now, and again, a significant amount of those in more advanced stages of engineering. Now, if we go to India, I think in Seffi's presentation was already covered all of that, but we see India as one of the key growth markets currently when we look at the world. And we're confident about this because not only because of the ambitious government targets, but really the strong emphasis on developing utility scale PV plants through the Solar Centrals program, and also because of the rise of the open access projects. If we try to think also about what's slowing down the market, in addition to the most known challenges, we see potential issues related to digitalization of GIS data, which makes it difficult for project developers to identify land, and also sometimes constraint in the labor market and the availability of skilled engineers that can develop all of these projects. However, on this last point, we are seeing a marked improvement, and we are proud to be helping a lot of our customers in this regard with our help center materials. If we go back to our data, I think this is a very interesting graph, because whereas we see that on average, utility scale projects across the world are about 60 megawatts in size, the projects that are being planned in India with PVK's ground mount are significantly larger, at over 140 megawatts. This is actually 7 times the average in Europe and more than double in the USA, which are already very big compared to European standards. I think this reflects really this focus on large utility scale deployments of the Indian market with again, with the solar parks scheme, which create these massive dedicated areas for solar generation, which help drive economies of scale and reduce constraints around land acquisition. I think the growth in the distributed market driven by the open access projects could drive this project size down. So I'll be very excited to keep track of this trend going forward. In the USA, we see very large projects, which particularly help developers unlock additional economies of scale in that environment, which is a lot more cost constrained. And all of this obviously contrasts with Europe, where projects tend to be much smaller because of land scarcity or higher population density and a traditional or historical additional focus on distributed generation. One of the trends that I find most interesting is what we observe around mounting structures. So whereas projects installed in the past years have seen a predominance already of projects with single axis tracking, we still see a majority of projects in the pipeline being planned with fixed structures. Now, obviously, there's a lot to unpack there, but what is clear is that single axis trackers have been growing very strongly in the past and are almost at parity with fixed structures. Now, in India, we see a very marked majority for fixed tilt projects, and I think this is quite interesting. The Indian market has grown very fast, very quickly, and I think this could be a sign of the cost sensitivity of Indian market players who have to compete under very competitive auctions that drive a need to reduce capex and opex of project, which are obviously not helped by the use of fixed tilt structures. Obviously, again, this is not static, and I'll be watching this very closely as well going forward. And now finally, the last trend that I wanted to share is about inverter configurations. And our data suggests that India is moving towards the global trend of adopting string inverters, which has been slight majority in built projects and has been a very clear majority of the projects that are planned in our tool. So whereas respective publications place a share of projects with string inverters installed last year at around 60%, in our data, we see a very strong preference for string inverters already since 2023, with over 80% of planned projects using this type of inverter configuration, which I think is really, a very clear indication of where the market is going. The trend has been that string inverters have been favored, and this is very likely to continue going forward. Now, in India, I think market players have been slightly later to adopt this trend, probably because of the same cost sensitiveness reasons. But we are seeing how over the years, the share of projects planned with string inverters is growing actually quite rapidly. So showing how the Indian market is not only maturing, but adopting best practices around the world. And that's it for me. I think, it's really exciting moment to be a solar market analyst. The solar market is expanding a lot and it's very dynamic. There's a lot of things to follow track of. And we'll be committed to providing the technology to make all of these projects happening going forward. I'd like to thank everyone for their time and looking forward to the Q&A. Michael, back to you.
Thanks, Miguel. I think we ran a little bit late, so theoretically, I think the webinar would be over now, but I think we take simply 10 minutes to work a little bit and discuss what we've learned today. So maybe everyone can switch on the camera. Anjali, Subramaniam. Okay, cool. So let's do it as a fire chat. So I try to be brief, concise with my questions, and I ask you to do the same with your answers. So maybe let's start a little bit on markets. So Anjali, looking across the globe, so what was the biggest surprise last year globally for you?
I think not really a surprise, but we expected this trend. But it was a bit of slower what we expected and what we needed. You know, and we think that few markets really did well and also joined the gigawatt scale kind of list. And we think that a really good push is required to get at the rate of 1 terawatt annual installation, every year. So yeah.
Okay, cool. Thanks, Miguel. So what surprised you most actually? So when you look at actually the market potential also from your through your software eyes.
I think what really surprised me, particularly while I was preparing for this this webinar, there's a lot of talk about uncertainty and whether or not the projects are going to go ahead. There's a lot of talk about some markets about whether projects are profitable and they're going to be able to actually be built. When we look at our data, we see a lot of activity. We see a lot of new projects being started, new projects being planned. So I think this really shows how alive the market is. The market is adapting. We're only recently launched battery features in our tool to basically serve the growing number of solar project developers that are moving into this market. But it's only going to be temporal. I am quite confident that we're going to continue seeing growth around the world because we see that activity. If the projects were being abandoned, people, I don't think, would bother as much to put all those hours of work into all of these projects.
Okay, Subramaniam, when we look at India, I think it looks now almost like a solar poster child. Is it all as good as it looks now, or what do you think could be done better?
I mean, we have gone through a lot to come here, so it has not been an easy journey. We had to cross a lot of hurdles there. But yeah, I mean, in terms of what can be done, one thing we did good, but we slightly did it late, is strengthening the domestic supply chain. We could have started much earlier, but somehow better late than never. But what we should do is focus more on upstream. Module cell, we are fine, but I think wafer and ingot, there is definitely a need for a better push there. That is number one. Number two, distributed renewable energy side, especially on rooftop and pumps, the emphasis has not been much until recent past. But now there is an accelerated push for it. The intensity is higher. Like I told you, our target is 10 million in 3 years. If we do 10 million, then we will be the largest rooftop in terms of number of households in the world, because the top 1, 2, 3 countries combined together are also equivalent to 10 million. So that is the pace at which we are looking at distributed there. So yeah, these are the two things that we can do better. One on manufacturing upstream, and two, getting more, focusing more on the spread of solar along with the growth.
Okay, then let's talk a little bit about the white elephant. So it's great actually what China has done for the solar sector. So both on supply and demand. So I think without China simply pushing solar to so hard, actually the world would not be where it is today. So of course that has created a dependency. It has created also, I said, less to an extreme overcapacity, which on the one hand is nice for developers to now profit from these low prices, but that's of course very painful for manufacturers. Consolidation is coming, is happening, and we don't see, at least I think manufacturers don't see the light at the end of the tunnel. So I think neither the Chinese nor those who are outside China and have to compete with this low product. So how can the sector, the global sector, actually deal or has to deal with that special situation? So it's not unique. We see that also in other products with electric cars. We see that in the wind segment. But I think nevertheless, solar, the overcapacities are extremely huge, and I think and also the manufacturing side, the dominance is extreme compared to many other sectors. So I don't know. What's your take on this, Miguel?
I don't know. Thanks for the very good question and very topical. I think it was clear at Intersolar this year when you looked at the booths in A1 of the manufacturers, how toned down they were compared to other years, and I think it's a very difficult time for them. But if we take a step back and we think about our fight against climate change, this is such a unique opportunity. We're normally used to living in a world of scarcity, of not having enough resources, and now we have the opportunity to install all of this solar at very cheap levels. There's basically double the manufacturing capacity than what we install annually. So I think this is really for me, this should be a wake-up call to remove all of those barriers that slow down the development and the engineering of PV projects, because I'm not sure how long that overcapacity can last if all of the manufacturers or all of those manufacturers cannot survive. So anyway, I think this is just more reasons to push policymakers, but also market players to install more faster.
Yeah, so this is a good question. So how can we turn this advantage, this cost advantage that we have now, really into an opportunity and have more countries profit from that? Because it was very interesting. I was in a meeting at Intersolar, was in an internal meeting with financing company, with financing providers, with banks, with investors. And one of the bankers said, actually, hey, you as solar, or especially in the renewable segment, but also solar, you go out and always say, hey, we're high capex and low opex. Actually, she said, you should go out and say, we are lower capex and lower opex. Because when we compare ourselves to new gas, we're cheaper, actually, also, and many new other plants. So that means, how can we turn this situation we're into actually also an opportunity and make countries adapt solar faster? Because I think the bottleneck we see at the moment, and that's actually also companies or politicians blame us for that. Hey, solar has been already growing too quickly. The infrastructure couldn't cope with you, and regulatory adaptations couldn't cope with you. So with these boundary conditions, we know actually that we're missing grids. I think the policies, the market designs are often not fit for the solar purpose. How can we nevertheless actually use this low-cost advantage that we have to go faster? Anjali?
Yeah, I mean, couple of points here, Michael, I would suggest is, one is that we have been seeing that there is, a strong need of auction pipeline in the place for utility scale solar, which can utilize the supply chain capacity we have annually. Second is we need to really be thinking about about the technical dynamics and of the supply chain, for example, in the quality, in the efficiency, the need of the markets based on the technology available in solar space. And there have been a race, to really upgrade the technology every month or so, So how can we come at a consensus, we should be really thinking about that, because investment here really plays a huge part, and sometimes there is a sacrifice being done by small manufacturers here, as well. So the larger player sustains, but what we do about this condition. So we have been kind of discussing this as well. So yeah, few points here I wanted to highlight.
Thanks. Subbu?
I mean, I can talk from India's experience. There would be a point of time where you have to balance production with deployment. Uh, it's a chicken and egg problem. If you have manufacturing to scale, your cost of deployment will be cheaper. There is no doubt there. We have seen from the elephant in the room that we are talking about. At the same time, as we get closer to a monopoly, that itself is not good for the growth of the sector, because you need to have resilient supply chains which are diversified at the same time. So I think there should be a I always talk about this, and I'm sure many people are bored of me talking about this, but we need to have a kind of an Airbus model of solar manufacturing. One country cannot do it fully, and one country doing it will not reduce costs. How European nations, including the then UK and EU, have come together to optimize the production as well as to hone their competitiveness in each parts of the manufacturing value chain, and ultimately give one of the best aircrafts the world have seen. I think we now need to look at it in the same way for solar too. Maybe if not US, at least the Australians, Japanese, our friends from Europe and India should now join hands and try to establish the entire value chain in terms of collaborative manufacturing, not just for the existing technology, but also the next gen, so that we hedge our risks and our supply chain is diversified. Otherwise, we will only be stuck in this narrative of when there is something available cheaply, why are we not using it, versus why are we not promoting domestic manufacturing. It is not uh, black and white. You cannot take a decision on that just based on economics. There are more factors which are far more important than economics at stake, including energy independence and energy security. So I think that should supersede any decision that we are taking. And like you said, every crisis is an opportunity, and it is now time to make manufacturing great again.
Okay, cool. So maybe I think since we're really late, so one final question. I think we have COP coming up soon, and I think that's where many of you will be. So what's the message, Anjali? You said actually, of course, solar is growing fast, but is not as fast as you would like, or would think you would. It has to grow to meet the 2030 tripling target. So what's your message actually? What's GSC's message in Brazil in November?
Yeah, as I've been mentioning in my slide as well, it's really clear we need grid capacity at the right time. We need the strong pipeline, the strong annual pipeline, I would say, for the project to deploy at the right time. We need the low cost of finance to really uplift the regions or the countries who has the potential, which are Latin American countries, the Southeast Asian countries, the MENA region, the African. We need their huge role in this journey as well. We need to be really enforcing the skilling part, and we need the right solar workforce on time. So grid finance, right skilling, the standards in place, and the right policy and regulatory framework with the strong offtake agreement or the market reforms happening on the ground. Yeah.
Okay. So what's your take actually on that? So what would be your main message?
I mean, I think it is about time COP distinguishes the difference between outcome and outputs. I hope this time the emphasis would be more on output. As we are at the precipice of what one can only talk about as a new renewable energy revolution, I think equitable and just transition, especially in countries that will definitely be affected more adversely due to climate change, should be at focus. Like I said, we should come out of the notion of outcomes are good outputs. There should now be definitely quantifiable outputs that can be enforceable, especially at the interests of global south.
Okay, thanks. Maybe finally to the industry. So Miguel, you've been in the industry also for a while. So so in the next few years, so do you expect smooth growth somewhat, or are we continuing on the solar coaster, which is a word inherent almost to our segment?
The solar coaster is forever, Michael, and we're all on it. But I think everything smooths out as if you take enough steps back. There will always be peaks and troughs in many across the world, but the global trend will be of relatively stable growth. I think this period is one of adaptation and of sophistication of the industry, where we're really growing up, after probably a second teenage growth spurt. So that will help everyone plan and be more reliable. It's undeniably going to be a period of difficulty for many, of increased competition, but where I think we will come out much stronger. And thinking a little bit, I thought you were going to ask me about the COP. I think, thinking about the recommendations of the Global Solar Council, I think the one that echoes the most with us, obviously we support all of them, but the one that echoes with us the most, because we feel it, we are exposed to it every day in our work, is the one on skills. Is on the one on the need to bring more people into the industry, because as much as we can offer massive efficiency gains, there has to be people to actually benefit from those efficiency gains, and to actually build all of those projects, not only quickly, but to the highest possible standards of quality that will become more and more complex, sophisticated, and big. So yeah, if I could have one wish from the COP, is that is highly on the agenda.
Perfect. Wonderful. Thanks a lot. So I think we as Solar Power Europe focus now a lot. We start on storage. We started a storage platform actually during Intersolar, so where we really push actually that tool, battery storage in particular, to bring the flexibility that's needed in order also to install faster and more solar in more mature markets where the infrastructure is not as or expanding as quickly as we would need it. Again, thanks a lot to all of you for your presentations, for your contributions. Just I don't know if I can have the slides quickly. Yep. If you want to download the Global Market Outlook, you can find it on our website. Here's a QR code. And I would also like to follow on what Anjali already did, and I think Subramaniam also appreciates. Wherever you are, please support your local, regional, and in the end, of course, also the Global Solar Association. We need strong lobbying. I think the fossil fuel lobby, you're reading about that, you're seeing that every day, is strong and is very active. So we need your support and in order to speak out for you. And that leaves me to say once again, thank you to everyone and have a nice day and a nice evening, and see you hopefully soon. Take care. Ciao.
Thank
you.
you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.